Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So today we are working on this 2002 Warrior. The gentleman who had this, he was moving out of state, but he said that he used this up until the starter went. At least that's what he suspected. So we got a good deal on this thing. So let's get to it. So the first thing that I went through is got some power on it just to see if if it was a battery issue. Hooked up the battery and tried starting it. When I started it, it sounded like the starter was going, or it was trying, but it was just spinning. So I didn't know if it was the actual starter or something else, a gear. So what I ended up doing is I came over to the starter, and what I tried to do is I took out the starter, and that is a 8mm on the bottom, and then another one on the top. Once I took the starter out, I hooked up to the battery, and I tried turning on the starter. And what I found out is that the starter was actually spinning, but so the starter seemed like it was working just fine. So I believe that it must have been something else. So now that we've confirmed that we have a good starter, what we're gonna check next is behind this cover. So what we have back here is your stator, but also behind the stator we have, I believe, your one-way bearing, which is also responsible for starting. It all hooks up back there. So let's just take a look inside, and then let's go over to the bench and see what tools we'll need. So some of the tools that we're gonna need are just basic. A few ratchets, some sockets, extension, and then some power tools. If you have them, great. If you don't sweat it. These tools just work just as fine. But again, if you do have them, they make life easier. If you don't have them, once you get a chance, I would invest in these. They are a lifesaver. All right, guys, so first we are going to start by taking our cover off. And this is you're gonna need a 5mm hex key. And once you get this loose, just be careful to not lose these. Right now my garage is actually clean, so if I drop one, it won't be too bad. But just make sure you stay organized. It does help in the end when you put everything back together. And then our next step is to get the stator cover off. There's a few ways you can do it. You can take the bolts around here off first, or you can do this one off. It doesn't matter, it's all the same. What I am going to do is start with this. You're gonna need a 17mm socket, and then you can use a 1/2-inch ratchet or power tools. Again, if you don't have them, it's okay. What's gonna happen here is this is gonna want to turn. So you can always put like a wrench here to hold it. But just since we have power tools, we're gonna take advantage of it. So here we go. And just like that, it comes out. And again, you wanna stay organized. Try to anyways. This is gonna come out first, and then this comes out after. Now that we have that out, what we are going to need or do next is a 8mm. Right now that we took this part off, you're gonna have all these on the outside to take out. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Again, if you don't have power tools, that's okay. You can do it by hand, but since we have them, we're gonna take advantage of it. And right before I take the last one out, this whole cover is coming out along with these wires. So what I am going to do is unhook this from the wire loom. And then they're just quick connects, and then just feed them around. Make sure you don't pull on them. This doesn't look too fragile, but you never want to really pull them. All right, now that you have the cover off, there is some oil here. So unless you have the bike at an angle that way, you're gonna have some oil that's gonna come out. So what I always like to have is some rags handy, or some rags or some sort of oil pan. But in this case, it's a table, so it doesn't really matter. You just carefully move it around. All right, so now that we've taken our stator cover off, what we are left here is with these dowel pins. Make sure you don't lose these. These are there to make sure your cover goes in the right spot. So now that we are here, what we want to do is inspect the starter clutch. Starter clutch, one-way bearing. So essentially what we're going to do is make sure we're going to try and go one way, but it looks like I can go both ways. So that tells me that our starter clutch is bad. So what we're going to do is use our stator puller to pull out the stator, and then check the bearing in the back, which at this point we already know it's bad, but to replace it. So I would not recommend starting this job unless you have your puller. I got this from eBay. It's a Tusk clutch puller. Basically what you do is you thread this onto the stator, and then you thread this in. What that does is it pushes this and pulls the stator. And just, you want to make sure you start it by hand. Make sure it goes in real easy. You want to back this up all the way. So you want to do is thread it in, like I said, easy. Make sure don't force it. And then once you're at the very end, then you can start threading this in by hand. And then once you are there, you take your same 17mm socket, and what you're going to do is tighten so it goes in. When you go in, it'll push on the crankshaft, and then it'll pull this out. And just like that, it comes right out. So in here is our bearing. I honestly won't be able to tell if there's anything. Again, I know already that it's bad. Up here there's a little arrow showing that one way is that way, so it would be that way, and it was going the opposite way. So yeah, let's take it over to the bench and take out that bearing. So now that you've taken all these out, you could probably leave them here. Behind here, I can already see the problem. It looks like there is a crack on this bearing. So to me, that looks like it's bad. So basically this bearing rides on here, and it's a one-way bearing, so it looks like it's going both ways, so to me that's bad. When you go online, you'll have several options. I felt that I just needed the bearing. I actually didn't feel the need to buy this, but there's lots of kits online. You can buy all this for more money. There's also replacement star bits, or not star, but they're hex, because these strip a little easier when they're on tight. But luckily these are okay, so I'm gonna keep them. So we'll throw that aside and we'll put everything back together. There's a few ways that you can do this. You can put this on right now and then put this on, but what I think is going to be easier is if I put this first together. That way when I go to put the bearing onto the starting gear, my bearing's not going to pop out. right, so once you have those on there, what I'm gonna do is put it on our stator on a vise, and make sure these are on snug. I don't want any of these falling out at some point, so we'll do that and I'll be right back. All right, so now that we have this as one piece, I tighten these off camera just because you don't need to say that, that's boring. But what I did do is I did it by hand. I didn't use my power tools simply because with power tools, these are star bits, and with power tools, you can get carried away and strip them. So definitely don't want that. I just did it snug. And for me, that's enough. So now that we're here, to put this all as one piece, this is what I was trying to check earlier. To put this on, you just kind of turn around, and there we go, it's on there. So this is what we were trying to test earlier. One-way bearing, basically goes one way, and that is it. One way. So now that we've confirmed, now that we've changed the bearing and confirmed that it's doing what it's doing, I believe that was a problem as to why it was just spinning when I was trying to start the quad. So now that we have this piece all together, let's go back to the quad and put it back together. All right, so now that we've taken that out, what I found it easier in the past for me is if I take the dowel pins and I put them on here first. Other people, it's the opposite. It's easier if it's on the machine. But for me, this is easier, so that's what I'm gonna do. But there's no right or wrong. As long as it works for you, that's fine. And also, when you are taking a stator or any cover, honestly, on an engine, it's always recommended that you change the gaskets. For one, I believe I'm gonna be doing some more work in here. So at the moment, I'm not gonna worry about that. We're just gonna put it on there. But when you put this back together, just make sure that the shaft here on your starting gear, it lines up with this hole. Those are the only things you're gonna fight when you put this back in. Other than that, it should go in, fairly easy. As long as you align your dowel pins and your shaft, you should be good to go. All right, and just like that, it went in. So honestly, you are good to go. What we do next is this I do by hand, simply because Warriors are pretty common to find parts for, but you still don't want to do this. I do it by hand simply because I don't want to cross thread it if I just start going in with my power tools. That's also a good rule of thumb. Well, not really. I'm personally not an expert, but I've seen and done enough covers. People say that cross tightening or whatever, it is a little bit easier, or it's not easier, but it's recommended. That way, it goes in securely and even. Some people say that if you do one side and go across, over time this can get warped. Personally, I've never had that problem, but again, I'm not an expert. And for me, this works. It's kind of like changing a tire on a car. You never want to go around. It's better if you go across. So I'm just going to apply that to pretty much the stator cover. So want to make sure that everything is tightened by hand. Once it's tightened all the way by hand, then I can use a ratchet or something, power tool, make sure it's on there tight. And again, don't go crazy. Make sure just it's on there snug, because you do not want to strip this. Again, these are common to find parts for, but it's not the point. And then once you feel that all these are tightened, you can go ahead and move on to the next. So now we go ahead and put this back in. And again, I'm sure there is some sort of torque specification out there, but I'm just gonna do what I've been doing, what's worked for me. If you wanna do, you know, with this, if you wanna do it with a torque specification, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, this works. All right, just a few taps and it's good to go. And then we move on to our cover. Same thing, do it by hand. Okay, so now that I've tightened everything by hand, I believe everything should be good to go. And the only thing you have left is to just feed your wires back up. And again, these are pretty fragile. Any wires pretty much are fragile, so you never want to yank on them or force them. And then just put everything back. So you hear a click. That one didn't click, but that's all good to go. All right, guys, that is how you replace a starter clutch on a Yamaha Warrior 350. If you have any suggestions as to what I could have done different, drop them below. Or if you have any questions on replacing this clutch, just leave it in the comments and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. This is a project quad, so I will definitely be doing more videos. For sure, I'm going to be going into the engine, the carburetor, you know, and anything else that requires attention. So if this video helped you out or would like to see any future videos, please like and subscribe. All right, guys, thank you so much and see you next time.